Hello and welcome to the GOMAD video tutorial. Today you'll be dressing this little Jumeau-style toy doll in a pleated dress and bustle jacket with elaborate bonnet. So that you get your doll completed in the time, I've already prepared the underwear, socks and shoes for you. So in your booklet you will be starting at step 8. Now I'm going to show you how to do the initial steps 1 to 7. So we have the doll, we have a piece of white silk ribbon and the unravelled bunker braid. So using PVA glue, I prefer to use Alien's tacky glue, just apply a small dot of glue to the front and back of the doll. Then we're going to make the pants, stick the ribbon onto the back of the doll, take it between the legs to the front of the tummy and snip off the excess. Just make sure that it's centered and stuck down. Apply a little bit of glue to the back and then we're going to make the waistband of the pants. Another little bit of glue on the back. Wind the ribbon around the doll's body to the centre back and trim off the excess. This is a very quick, easy way of making little silk pants for any little doll. So to pretty it up a bit, we're going to add a little bit of lacy frill around the legs. So add a thin line of glue around the leg opening all the way round. Then place the unravelled bunker braid onto the glue and stick it on all the way round. Try not to pull it too tightly, otherwise it'll become flat. You want to keep it looking as if it's a lacy frill around the leg of the pants. Trim off the excess and the leftover piece, as you can see, do the other leg exactly the same way. So that's the pants finished. Now for the socks. Apply some glue to the leg all the way around over the sides of the foot and the front of the foot, but not on the sole of the foot at this point. Starting at the centre back of the leg, place the lace onto the glue, wind it around the foot, following the curves. Then a line of glue on the lace at the back so that you can overlap the lace. Trim off the excess. The bit that's left will be the other sock, so don't throw it away. Then just smooth and even out the lace. Make sure it's fitted down over the front of the foot. Then trim away any of the excess lace that extends over the edge of the sole of the foot. This will cut down any bulk for the shoes. Now do the same for the other foot. Make sure that these socks are the same length, both socks are the same length. Now for the shoes. Using the coloured silk ribbon, we're going to first apply some glue just around the very edge of the foot, where the side of the shoe will be. Don't use too much glue here, otherwise it will bleed through the silk. Then place the silk ribbon onto the glue. Try and keep the top line of the ribbon in a natural line, not too high, otherwise they'll look like little boots. Trim off the excess. Then we're going to apply some glue onto the sole of the foot. Just a thin layer of glue over the sole of the foot, and then we're going to fold in the silk ribbon at the heel. Fold it over. You might need to just persuade it to stick. And then, a bit like folding in the edges of a parcel, apply a little bit of glue onto the folded section, and then fold in the two sides. There you can see it's folded in quite neatly. And then trim off any excess that extends over the front of the toe. You've no need to leave this to dry. When it's dry, apply some glue to under the toes, and then silk ribbon onto the centre of the underneath of the toe. A bit of glue on top. Then wind the ribbon over the front of the toes to make a little silk tube. Just hold it while the glue dries and snip off the excess. The rest of that ribbon will make the second shoe. So you can see you've got a little silk tube extending over the end of the toes. Now we're going to apply a little bit of glue just inside the end of the tube. And using your forefinger, just roll the silk over the end of the toes to under the sole of the foot. Smooth it all out while the glue is still damp, and you have a little two-part silk shoe. Now we're going to add the leather sole. So a little bit of glue all along the sole of the foot. It's the wrong side of the leather piece onto the sole of the foot. Press it on. It's a good idea to leave this to dry completely. Trim off the excess that'll be used for the other foot. And when it's completely dry, just trim all the way around the foot to make the sole of the shoe. Just carry on snipping around as close to the edge of the foot as possible. And there you have the leather sole of the foot. So now you have both shoes ideally exactly the same. So this is the point you'll be starting at, the lace petticoat. So you need to gather all along the straight edge of the lace, make a holding stitch at one end, a few stitches on top of each other, Little bit of glue on the centre back of the doll, then place the end of the lace onto her waist, then another little dot of glue just to stop the petticoat from slipping down on the front of her pants at the waist. Pull it round, pull up the gathers tightly as you can and fasten off securely with a few stitches on top of each other. Snip off the thread. Then apply some glue along the inside of the back of the petticoat. And glue the back opening closed. Then arrange all the gathers evenly around the doll's waist. And that's her petticoat finished. Now for the skirt. Take the longest piece of silk ribbon, the 25 pleats, and run a gathering thread exactly the same way as you did for the petticoat along the top of the pleats. Now you're going to apply a line of glue along the inside of one of the pleats at the end, at the gathered end, the secured end, and place the skirt onto the petticoat. The bottom edge of the skirt should line up with the bottom edge of the petticoat. This prevents too much bulk at the waist. Then we're going to pull up the gathers, take a stitch through, that'll make it easier to gather up the skirt. Then pull the gathers up as tightly as you can. Bit tricky to hold the needle and do that at the same time. Then secure the skirt gathers 2 or 3 stitches on top of each other. Make sure it's secure. Snip the thread. Then just adjust the skirt, make sure it's pulled down to an even length all the way around. Arrange the gathers so that they're even, they're not all bunched up in one place. Then we're just going to glue the back opening closed. Put some glue along the inside line of a pleat. And put the edge of a pleat onto the glue and just squidge it closed. It doesn't matter if the back of the skirt's a little bit messy because that will be hidden by the jacket later. But again, just make sure the pleats are even. It's a good idea just to put a little bit of glue onto the skirt underneath, glue it onto the petticoat so that you don't risk it slipping down when it's in the right position. Now for the bodice. I've applied some glue onto the back of the bodice piece, a little bit of lace and silk ribbon, and we glue the folded edge just under the chin. Make sure it's central and press it down onto her shoulders and her tummy, and then trim off the excess. You want to trim it to just below the top edge of the lace of the skirt, and leave that to dry. Now for the skirt ruche, the wide piece of silk ribbon folded in half, so you want to gather along the fold line, pull the gathers up very tightly, as tight as you can, and secure with 2 or 3 stitches. This will be the waist ruche around the skirt, so it will conceal all the edges, the top edges of the skirt, the petticoat and the bottom edge of the bodice. Now we're going to apply a little bit of glue onto the back of the ruche. If there's a side where you can see any of your stitches, that's the back. And then we're going to glue it centrally onto the doll, just covering the bottom edge of the bodice section. Press it firmly, and you must leave this to dry for a few minutes. When the glue is dry, now we're going to take the ends of the ruche and fold them round to the back. A little bit of glue underneath where it's going to glue onto the centre back of the skirt. Make sure you hold it firmly and tightly at this point. You don't want it all loose and baggy. Trim off the excess. Now still keep a hold of that piece that you've just glued on, and do the same with the other side. Just pull it round and fold it as you go. Another bit of glue on the back. Fold it over and trim off the excess. Now you must hold this until it's completely dry. If you take your fingers away, it'll spring off and you have to start again. So do hold it until it's completely dry. Just adjust any of the pleats. And there you have the waist ruche. I've already cut out your jacket pieces for you, but this is the method. I've folded the piece of hair stripe silk in half and laid out the pattern pieces onto the silk. The easiest way to do it is to actually place the bottom of the sleeve on the fold. You've got a bit left over in case you make a mistake. So these are the pieces all cut out. You should have 2 fronts, 2 backs, and cut down the fold. That'll give you the 2 sleeve pieces. These are the pieces as you have them in your pack. You have 2 sleeves, 2 back pieces, and 2 jacket fronts. So we're going to start with the back pieces, place them right sides together, match them up carefully, and then you're going to stitch down the centre back seam following the curves. Use as small a needle as you can manage and a very fine thread. A good way to start is to take a few stitches on top of each other. Then stitch through to the back and take the thread over the edge. That will hold the bottom edge closed. and then use a tiny back stitch to close the seams. You'll be using that on all of the seams on the jacket. So follow all the way around, following the curves. This is the jacket seam stitched. Very carefully just snip into the notch in the centre back of the jacket. Now you have to press the seams open. The easiest way to do this, I find, is with a ballpoint tool. Just press the seams open with a tool, and then I use a medium heat iron, not too hot, to press the seams open. Now we're going to attach the fronts. So again, make sure right sides together. And you're going to stitch the side seam exactly the same way as you've done for the back seam. So here we've got the two sides are stitched on and the seams are pressed open. So all that's left is to stitch the shoulder seam. The two shoulder seams, again, stitched. Now you won't be able to press the seams open on the shoulders, so just turn the jacket the right way out, and I put my ballpoint tool inside and then just use the yarn directly onto the seam just to flatten it. Now to add the picot braid around the edge. Start at the centre of the neck, applying a little bit of glue at a time. Don't try and do the whole jacket all in one go, or it'll end up in a gluey mess. So just do maybe, I don't know, 3/4 of an inch at a time. A little bit of glue right on the very edge of the jacket. This will help to prevent any fraying. If you do have the odd stray flyaway fray, just snip it off. But glue on the edge, and then a section at a time glue the picot braid onto the edge. Make sure you don't see any of the edge of the jacket beyond the edge of the picot braid. So you carry on all the way around, easing it all the way around. It's quite a flexible, silky braid, so it'll easily follow the curves on your jacket. Just make sure that you wipe any glue as you go. And there's the whole jacket with the picot braid all the way around. You must leave that to dry now. And when it's dry, pop the jacket onto the doll. It's easy. You can swivel her arms backwards to get the second arm in. So it's always more tricky than the first one. So pull it on nice and tight and even. Just make sure it's pulled down at the back. And now we do the sleeves. With the right sides together, hold the sleeves together, and we're going to make tiny snips all the way around the top edge, the shoulder edge of the sleeve. Just tiny, tiny little snips into the silk, following the curve as you go. We'll be folding these edges under, so The snips need to be as even as possible. Then fold up a tiny hem at the cuff edge of the sleeve and glue it in place. Then along the top edge, where you've cut the snips, glue just on the snips. Then fold the snips, section at a time. Try to preserve that curve along the top edge of the sleeve. You might need to persuade it. The bonded violin on the underside doesn't glue very readily, so just keep at it, keep holding it, pressing it with your fingers. Then when you've got them all stuck down, press it with an iron, a warm iron. So there we have the sleeve. Do the same with the other sleeve. Fold right sides together to stitch the underarm seam. Again, exactly as you did with the jacket seams. So stitch along the sleeve seam. And then trim off any excess silk as close to your stitching as you dare. Obviously don't cut into the stitching. And now we're going to turn the sleeve. You'll need a pair of tweezers, ideally with an angled end. Then push the tweezers into the sleeve at the shoulder end. Take them right through the cuff edge. Then pinch one edge of the silk in the tweezers, hold it tightly, and then fold the sleeve over the right way out. Use the tweezers to just pull the cuff edge out. Then again, using your ballpoint tool, just pop the sleeve over the edge of it. That will help to open it up and shape the sleeve. It will need to be completely open before you can put it onto the doll's arms. So do both sleeves in the same way. So now we're going to put the sleeves onto the doll. Make sure the sleeve is open. Don't squash it shut. And then we're going to apply a little bit of glue just inside the shoulder end of the sleeve, all the way round. Try not to get any on the outside. Just make sure it's all the way around. Then pop the sleeve onto the doll's arm. And using your tweezers, pull the sleeve up over the raw edges of the jacket, the armhole. The curved section of the top of the sleeve should be at the top of the arm, and the underarm seam should be under the arm. So make sure it's positioned exactly where it needs to be. Let's pull it up, ease up over the armhole. Make sure it's properly stuck down, and just fold out any creases. And do the same with the other arm. So now we're going to secure the jacket onto the dress. So a little bit of glue just inside the front edge of the jacket. And press it down onto the front of the bodice. Just even it out, make sure it's exactly where it needs to be. Hold one side while you do the other. It's most undignified position for a little doll. You should be able to just see the front of the bodice and the ruche at the front of the skirt. So just hold that in position while it dries. Then the tiny silk ribbon, a little bit of glue on the back, and that will go on the neck at the front. You can put this on before you put the jacket on, but it's often the case that it won't really show. The edges of the jacket will conceal it, so it's best to put it on after the jacket's fitted. You'll be able to see it better. And then at the back we'll add the large silk ribbon bow. Now for the wigging. The flat section, just carefully snip away any of the little flyaway hairs, but be careful not to snip into the fold, otherwise the entire section will fall apart. So just carefully snip any little flyaways. And we're going to start off with the curly fringe at the front. So there's probably going to be a little bit of curl at one end of your ringlet curl. So snip a small section off. And we're going to apply some glue to the front of the head. If you're a bit worried about getting glue on your costume at this point, just wrap a piece of cling film or a bit of kitchen towel around the doll, around the costume. You definitely don't want any glue on it at this point. But just adding a little bit of glue onto the front of the head, and then placing the curl onto the head exactly where you want it. Now we're going to make the flat wig cap section. So apply a thin layer of glue over the rest of the head. Make sure the whole head is covered. And then using the flat section, place the end onto the centre back of the head. Press it firmly to make sure it's stuck where it should be. And then you're going to wind the flat section all the way around the doll's head. Make sure that the glue is covered all the way around, that there isn't any glue oozing out anywhere. And then snip off the excess. Just ease the section over the head. And with a small square of cling film, place it over the head and wrap it tightly around. This will help to bed the wig down onto the glue, and it will also help to tame any small flyaway hairs as well. Just the heat of your hand will help to bed the wig on. Now you must leave that to dry now completely. While the wig is drying, you can prepare the bonnet. So you need the smaller section of pleated silk ribbon, 15 pleats. Gather it along one edge, and the section of lace, again gather it along the straight edge. So the pleated ribbon is gathered into a half moon section, semicircle, and the lace has to be gathered to fit just onto the bonnet. And here they are glued together to form the bonnet shape. Now the glue is dry on the wig, so just take the cling film off, and now we're going to add the curls. Just again trim any little flyaways that you can see, and just check that it's even all the way around. Now we're going to add the curls. So you want some fresh glue for this bit, because you're going to be adding glue onto the viscose. If your glue's a little bit dried up, it will grab the hair and pull it off, so it needs to be fresh, wet glue. So I'm adding some glue onto the back of the wig, covering where the join is, and taking it up just onto the edge of the flat section. Now I'm going to lay a piece of the curl just on top of the back bow, in the centre, snip it. Same again. The second curl on either side will be slightly shorter than the first curl. Again, snip off. Now on the other side of the centre. Just make sure they're straight and even. And then the last curl at the back will go all the way over the top edge of the curls. Just cover the raw edge of the curls, although once the bonnet's on you won't see them, but it's nice to know they're covered. Now you can leave your wig just like that, but if you want curls coming over the doll's shoulder, which does look quite sweet, then we can add some side curls. You want to put a little bit of glue on the side of the doll's face. It's just so that the curl will actually follow the shape of her face, and up over the side of the wig. Then attach the curl going over her shoulder onto the side of her face and up the side of the wig. Again, this will all be covered by the bonnet at the top. You can do one or two, it's up to you. Little bit of glue up the edge of the wig. Make sure you don't get any glue on your fingers at this point, otherwise the viscose will stick to them. So there she has two little curls just cascading over her shoulder. You can do it on both sides if you like, or not at all, it's up to you. Again, just use the heat of your hand just to tame it, pull it in, smooth it off. If your finger's a bit rough like mine, then putting the cling film on will mean you don't muss up the hair when you smooth it. And there she is, the wig's done. So the little bonnet, we've glued the lace onto the inside of the bonnet. Just do a little test fit just to assess where you're actually going to put the bonnet. A bit of a dry run. And we're going to apply some glue on the underside of the lace, following that line, and along the inside edges of the sides of the bonnet. So I've added the glue. Now take your time doing this, because you only really get one go at it. If you have to take it off, you'll have messed the wig up. So position the bonnet, then pull the sides of the bonnet down and just press it all the way around. Just make sure it's actually bedded onto the doll's head properly. You'll have to hold it while the glue dries. You can see at the back. Make sure the pleats are all nice and even. Now the silk buds and bows trim, there's a small piece of buds and bows trim which will go at the front of the bonnet. So apply a line of glue on the back of the buds and bows trim. And I find it easiest to position them using the tweezers. So this is going to go onto the front of the bonnet. Just ease the bonnet back a little bit. The centre of the buds and bows will go right on the centre of the top of the doll's head, and the other two pieces will just tuck inside the bonnet. Just make sure they're stuck in and they're nicely positioned. So that just finishes off the front of the bonnet nicely. Then to finish off the back of the bonnet, you have a silk rosette bow. So you're going to apply some glue onto the back of the rosette bow, right to the ends of the loops. And then position it on the back. You can either have it upright or at an angle, whichever you think looks best. I'll go for an angle. Then glue that over the bottom edge of the bonnet, the pleats, and that just finishes off the back of the bonnet nicely. You can see here I've already glued the large silk ribbon onto the back of the jacket. And there she is. She's finished. Well done.